Hello, welcome to Top Wisdom. Today I'm going to summarize the poem called A Young Man's Thoughts before June the 16th. So I'm going to summarize that poem. It's by Fhazel Johennesse. It's by Fhazel Johennesse. So, without wasting any time, this poem is very short. As you can see that this poem is very short. It's not really a big poem. It is very, very short. So I'm going to start by a glossary. So I'm going to explain the words that are challenging to learners. That are very challenging to learners. So I'm going to start by explaining them first, which is going to be belch first. Belch. Too loudly let air out of the stomach through the mouth, also known as bump. To belch means too loudly let air out of the stomach through the mouth, also known as bump. Strummed. Play the musical instrument such as a guitar by moving the fingers across the strings. That is strummed. Drenched. Completely wet. So now I'm going to start by explaining about the poet. Going to start explaining about the poet first. South African poet is born in 1954. He wrote most of the poetry during the 1970s and 1980s. He and the poet Chris Van Wyk started the Black Consciousness, a movement that promoted an awareness of the dignity of the rights of black people, started by Steve Biko. Literary magazine, Poetry, which gave the voice to young aspirant black writers. However, the magazine was short-lived as it was banned by the apartheid government. So now I'm going to explain about the poem, which is very important. Going to talk about the poem now. And it's very important that you guys listen here. This poem is a mixture of forms. This poem has a mixture of forms. It is a free verse. It is in free verse. Because it does not rhyme or have a particular rhythm or structure. There is no punctuation. It is not formalized. It can also be seen as an elegy because of its sad and mournful tone. The mood of the poem is melancholy, wistful, and anxious, which is the word you can use is anxious. The other words are really is just to flex, but you can use that the mood of the poem is anxious. The author of the poem is anxious. The poet conveys a sense of the potential loss, pain, and suffering, and an awareness of what will be sacrificed. It also has the characteristics of the lyric as it expresses the poet's feelings. As I've said, that the poet, the author of the poem, which is Fhazel Johennesse, is anxious. The poet is anxious. Analysis. As you know, guys, this poem is not really that big, so the analysis are not really that big. On 16 June 1976, high school children from Soweto marched to protest against the government law that half of their schooling had to be in Afrikaans, which they saw as the language of apartheid leaders and oppressors. The police shot live bullets and tear gas, and many were injured or killed. After this tragic episode, many young people went into the exile to join the underground resistance. In this poem, Johennesse imagines himself as one of those teenagers the day before the event, foreseeing the tragedy that will take place. Those are the analysis of the poem. Now you know what the poem is about, and what's based on the poem, and what's the reason why the poem is written. So these are one of the things that are important, because they are going to ask you a question like, what is the mood of the poem? What is the mood of the poet? Those are the questions. Like, another question is to discuss the context in which this poem was written. So you can explain why it was written. Like, you can say on 16 June in high school, children in Soweto marched in the protest against what, like that. So these are the most important things to know about the poem. So don't forget to subscribe and like the channel and share the video. Peace.